This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com and Review. What I'm looking at today is 2024's Tarot, directed by Spencer Cohen and Anna Hallberg. The screenplay for Tarot was written by Spencer Cohen and Anna Hallberg, based on the book Horoscope by Nicholas Adams. And if you ask me, Horoscope is an awesome title. Tarot's fine. Horoscope is better. I don't know why they didn't go with it. And Spencer Cohen and Anna Hallberg not only directed the movie, they also wrote the screenplay. Which is interesting because despite having been written by two people, Tarot is curiously underwritten. You would think at least one of them would notice that not only does the story not really make sense, but more importantly, none of the relationships between the people rings true, which makes it really hard to watch, never mind enjoy. And let's be clear, the actors aren't to blame, because the acting is actually pretty good. It's the writing that betrays them time and time again. Tarot is not a terribly original movie, and not having read the novel that it's based upon, I can't comment on that. Though what I can tell is that it takes a lot from a lot of different sources. Though two, by my reckoning, are 13 Ghosts and The Cabin in the Woods. The movie opens on 7 friends who are at a bonfire. Now, you'll come to know in a few minutes that they've rented a mansion. I think it's someone's birthday or something, but it's kind of strange because this mansion looks really decrepit. And could you please tell me what young person rents a mansion anyway? And where are they getting the money to rent a mansion? Already, this movie doesn't make sense. And it opens on us learning that Haley is breaking up with Grant. Why do we care? We didn't know who these characters were, and frankly still don't, because the movie hasn't been on 5 minutes before this information is put out there. It is strange, because it's not building character, it's just doing things. And we're supposed to, as viewers, care. I didn't know who Haley was prior to that moment. I didn't know who Grant was prior to that moment. And we don't see them really interacting. And this movie, I should mention, has a problem of telling instead of showing. We don't see any difficulties between Haley and Grant. Once again, we've barely seen them at all. So the idea that they're breaking up doesn't mean anything. It's just something the directors seem to do for reasons, or because movie. Another thing is that the relationship between Haley and Grant isn't at all relevant to the plot. I don't know who came up with the idea of Chekhov's gun, but it fits really well for this movie. Namely, if you're going to introduce something, be it an actual object or an idea, it has to be relevant to your main story. That Grant and Haley are breaking up isn't relevant to the story. And by the way, I should mention, in reference to Grant and Haley, they seem to get along pretty well. So why do we need to know? It's just weird and frankly kind of pointless. Another thing that I find very irritating about this movie is that Cohen and Hallberg do really irritating things in the name of character development, which don't develop character. For instance, it's mentioned that one character will eat things that have dropped on the floor for a second or so. Okay. We later see him do exactly that. So what? Once again, if it's not relevant to the story in some way, why are we seeing it? That he eats stuff off the floor is a quirk. It's not a character trait. Not really. At least as it's done in this movie. Now, I'm not saying that you can't have a character where eating something off the floor is an important part of that character, or at least a relevant part. You can do that, but you have to justify that. You have to make that make sense. But, like so many things in this movie, and it hasn't even been on for 10 minutes, things just kind of happen, and characters just do things with no relevance to the central plot. Another thing that's irritating about this movie is that I was trying to understand why these people are friends. They don't seem to hold anything really in common. They apparently go to the same college. But beyond that, everyone in this friend group is vaguely attractive except for Paxton, who's played by Jacob Batalon. And that's not to say that he's ugly. What I am saying is, in the context of these individuals, he is the most not attractive person in the group. And it's only interesting because, once again, these people don't fit together. They don't feel like they know each other. They are courteous to each other and friendly as well, but they don't seem like friends. It's really odd, but the dynamic is off somehow, and I can't really put my finger on why. But they strike me as a bunch of people who should know each other, and if they did know each other, they would not hang around. Why they're together is never shown. They just are. And in some movies that are better written, you can do that. With this movie, it needs to be justified, and it just doesn't work. And it's not the actors. It's this screenplay, which is just, I don't want to say it's awful, more so than it's just kind of lazy. Okay, so they're searching around this mansion, and they find a room that's locked with a sign which says, "Keep out." Now, I can't speak for you, but if I am renting someone's home, never mind a mansion, and I see a door in that house that says "Keep out," I'm not going in. It's not my house. It's not my business. Now, I would be curious to be sure, but if there weren't anything motivating me beyond that curiosity, I would not go in. It is none of my business what's in that room. If it smells of, I don't know, dead flesh, I'm probably going to find a way in because something seems off, namely that smell. But if it's just a room with a sign that says "Keep out," it's not my house, I'm keeping out. But apparently this logic doesn't work for Lucas, one of the friend group. And he not only enters the room, but to do so, he breaks the lock. Nothing in Lucas's character would indicate that he would do that. He initially seemed very happy-go-lucky and just kind, almost passive. But suddenly he just decides to break the lock to this room, a room he knows he shouldn't go in. This is part of what I'm talking about, how this movie never quite thinks it needs to tell us, or once again, show us why people do what they do. And it makes it frustrating because it feels like they're just going through the motions because of the movie, which, as far as I can tell, is exactly what's happened. Oh, they all enter the room, and it's like the scene from Cabin in the Woods, where they all find these objects, and whichever one they find will determine their fate. And so Paxton finds a very ornate set of tarot cards, and Paxton gives them to Haley because she knows how to read fortunes with tarot cards, because of course she does. Well, the movie tells us that her mother, I believe, died of cancer, and that's when she picked up tarot card reading, which, as an explanation, doesn't really make sense. Why would you do that? But once again, tarot is too lazy to tell us, no, I'm sorry, tarot's too lazy to show us why anyone does anything, really. So she just does. And if this were better written, viewers would probably just accept it. But since it's not, you're kind of wondering, or at least I was, why would she know how to use tarot cards? But in any case, she says that she's reluctant to use these cards because it's bad juju to use someone else's tarot cards. Juju's my word, she didn't say that. Though, with just the slightest bit of peer pressure, she gives in anyway and does it. And very soon afterward, her friends begin to die based upon the reading that she gave. If you've seen a promotion for tarot, they emphasize the figures on the cards coming to life. The Fool, the Hermit, and so on and so forth. And that very much put me in mind of 13 Ghosts, which did a similar thing. But unlike tarot, 13 Ghosts really went into the ghosts. So you saw them fairly often once the scenario in which the movie revolved around was revealed. Not really the case with Taro. You see some of these figures from the cards, but you don't really see them very often, and you don't see too many of them. So it's just unsatisfying. It comes off as a bit of a tease. Don't promote your movie in a way that indicates these monsters are really important to the narrative when they kind of aren't. And once again, they do turn up, but not terribly often, and not always in a way that's very interesting. For instance, there's a high priestess who I think is the first creature that we see, and kills someone with a ladder. It was just an odd choice of weapons. It was just kind of weak. Why would you use a ladder to kill anyone? There's so many ways you can at least be interesting, but a ladder ain't it. Taro's not a bad movie because it isn't well shot, because it is quite attractive to look at. The actors are attractive, the lighting is well done, it may be a little dim in some instances, but nothing you can't work with. It's not like AVP Requiem. Taro is a bad movie. It feels very lazily, very fill-in-the-blanks written. And keep in mind something, 2 people wrote this screenplay. Not 1, but 2. You would think that they would have at least tried to devise a system where one is checking on the other and making sure that the characters are given life, that they're given purpose, that things make sense, narratively speaking. That didn't happen. So instead we get PG violence at best, and a narrative that is weak, characters that feel uninspired and don't feel alive, and a story that you've seen before. This movie has been panned by a lot of people, and I think it's worth seeing, if only because you need to know what you shouldn't do, as well as what you should. And what do you do? This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com and Review. If you agree, disagree, let me know down below. And as usual, consider a like, follow, or buy me a coffee.